Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production, and our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we're going to talk about our kits, our little setups, and how they work. And hopefully you'll get some stuff out of it. You can ask questions about those if you'd like. Ask them now or while we're showing them off, and we'll show you a little bit about how we have our setups. What does it take to have these screens be what they are? So anyway, if you've got questions for the first hour, you can of course use Mukana. You can add the questions there. You can vote on those questions and chat with everybody else. If you're not in Mukana and you just want to ask a question, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Little QR code right there, and you can use that for the first hour. You can also use it for the second hour if you move quickly. And then most importantly, you can use it 24/7. So you can do this any time of the day. Just go to askofficehours.global and you can just throw a question in. We'll feed it in for the next day and discuss it there. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
First one comes from Clive Kitchener in Sook, British Columbia, Canada. Of the under $200 USB audio interfaces available, which is considered bang for the buck? The Focusrite Scarlett 3rd or 4th generation, the Behringer UM2, or the Behringer UMC22, the M Audio AOR 192x4, or something else?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I'll mention something else because it's something I used here in office hours for a long time before I got my Rodecaster Pro, and that's the Samson MixPad MXP124. I had the MXP124 FX, which has the digital effects on it, but this is a $199 mixer, and I think you can get it discounted cheaper than that many times. That's the list price on it. It has pretty clean preamps. Probably if you're going to be using a Shure dynamic microphone, it may not have enough gain you may hear a little bit of the self noise, but with a good condenser mic, which is what I was using into it, it's not a problem. And in the under $199, it gives you a lot of flexibility with multiple mic inputs and good monitoring so that you can hear yourself in side tone undelayed and not send it out. So you can do mix minus and things. So it's pretty good. It's in a box now because it's been replaced by my Rodecaster.
Alexander?
Yeah, so for under $200, I would look at, and since Clive, you are in Canada, I would look at the Universal Audio Volt audio interfaces. The Volt one, if you only need a single mic input, that's a good quality interfaces. The preamps are pretty good on those too, and they're currently on sale for, it looks like, $174 or so. You can see that here. If you have slightly deeper pockets, you will get a considerably better interface if you jump up to something like the Lewitt Connect 6, which I've mentioned here on the show before. It's $399 Canadian. The reason why I keep coming back to this one is because you get 2 mic inputs, but the preamps are significantly better. And at this price point, it's hard to beat because you get an interface with preamps that have at least 70 dB of gain, plus you get dynamics processing. So, sub $200 interfaces, you're not going to get any kind of EQ compression, any kind of noise suppression at all. And you get all that with the Lewitt, plus a really good loopback interface, and you can create custom Q mixes. It's got 2 headphone outputs. Each can have their own discrete mix. So this works great for podcasters. It also works great if you're just trying to track you and somebody else and you're doing some music and the other musician wants their own mix. So that's a good option as well.
Yeah, and I've been testing this. This is the MV-X2U, which if you just need an interface, this is great to put in there, where this is just literally the XLR in and USB-C out. It does have a 0 latency headphone jack. So if you're just looking for a base interface, it'll be under $200 and it will work as well. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Alexander Knight, Port Code Quickland, BC, Canada. I lost a recording on my ATEM Extreme ISO using my own NVMe drive. It's been running reliably for the last year. The stop record button failed to respond. Power cycled. The data was corrupt as it couldn't finalize. Apparently, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, Alex, did you? How long was the show?
It was about 90 minutes approximately, which is the typical length that we record. But it's weird that it's been fine for a year, all of it with using the same drives, and all of a sudden this happens. And I started going down the rabbit hole, asked people on Discord. They said they've had this issue. I can see people on the forums complaining about it, and they're.
Do you know when it failed?
It was, well, I can't, all I can say is that at the end, when I wanted to finish, I hit stop, and it just, from the ATEM control software, it just would not respond no matter what I do. So at that point, I had no choice but to power cycle. And of course, because it couldn't write the data, I had, I lost the whole project. There was no data there on the drive.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
That was going to be my question. Could you see the file that it created when you unplugged your drive and plugged it back into your computer? You couldn't see the drive. You couldn't see the file at all.
It
in that
did create a project
recording.
file. There was an ATEM ISO project file with the DRP project in there, but it was
like, empty.
Yeah, it was like 100 megabytes or something.
Yeah.
I don't.
That can be a problem.
Yeah, I will say that I've had enough failures that I don't depend on it. Like it's failed probably. I'm doing multicam. My ISO has probably failed 25% of the time. like it's not. So I don't really consider it I don't like lean into it as a solution. I have records usually, because I tend to be a belt and suspenders kind of person. I usually have other records, and I have the ISOs from the cameras. I have the HDMI out to something that's recording as well. So I've got a couple different things in front of me. But it has been, I haven't, and I've used, T5 drives. I haven't used my own NVMEs because I didn't consider it necessary, but I thought about using that in the future. But it was it was problematic enough that I didn't really consider it a solid solution for anything that I, like I hit record on it to see what it will do. Like I don't hit record on it to actually capture something that I need. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have a couple of hyperdecks that I use for backups. Is that a common choice?
Yeah. I mean, do you have are the little hyperdecks or the big hyperdecks?
I've got the shuttle and the medium one.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, for the 1080p, because this is 1080p and because I've got a couple of Pix 240s laying around, I use the Pix 240s because I can see it and I can see levels and I can, do a lot of other things. So I have the Pix 240, taking the output and goes through that to make that happen. So it's a little bit different, but it's just because I wouldn't recommend buying them. What's amazing is those prices have not changed dramatically. If anything,
they're
gone up.
Yeah, about $3,000 right now to get a used one.
I just did I don't know how I would have done what I did on Monday. I missed, was it Monday? No, Wednesday. Yes, 2 days ago. I was testing latency from one location to another. And what I had to do was I had to calculate the latency from an iPad to the camera. So what is the latency of the camera? And then I had to calculate the latency to across the country and then back. And so the way that I did that was I used a lot of old sound devices equipment was as I cobbled together what I had to do. I wanted to have frames, so I had to have screens, but I also wanted to have I wanted frames, but I also wanted audio is not limited to frames. So you can only say, I'm 30 or 60, or in this case, 60 frames a second, 15 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds, 45 milliseconds off if you're only looking at the frames. But if you listen to the audio, you can get a much more accurate picture of it. So I used the Slate, the iPad Slate app. I had a USB-C coming out of that, and that went into a USB Pre 2. That USB Pre 2, one channel went out to a Blackmagic 12K. The other channel went out to the Mix Pre. The Pix 240. Then, to make it more complicated, the Pix 240 went into another channel in the Blackmagic camera. And the reason for that is, and then the Blackmagic camera went to the switch, and coming out of the switch from the New York knock, I got I put it into the Mix Pre, into the Pix because it's got XLR in. So what I have there is I have this weird mash where when I hit go, it drops the beeps. The beeps hit the camera. They also hit the Pix. Then it sends and then they send it out and it comes back and it hits the Pix again because I can do 4 channels, it's SDI and XLR. So it hits the Pix again and hits the camera again. And what that does is it creates I can calculate between every point. I can calculate the delta between the impulse and the return to a very, I mean, it's not automatic like it would be, but it's analog in the sense that if I used a matchbox, I only get the SDI to and from New York. Like, so I don't get, so by using the camera and using the other pieces, I get a more realistic view of it. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is that, I mean, I bring it up because that's why, I mean, when I put the pics in there, I was like, can I use anything else? And I was like, no. like not in a small box, because it has the XLR. Here's the thing that makes the pics different. It has 2 XLR ins, 2 XLR outs. I can take SDI and XLR, and then I can define what channels are going back out of it, because I had to pick the channels that went back to the camera. And all of those things, like, there's no other box that does that right now. You know, it's a really interesting puzzle. Yeah, go ahead.
It also has a delay on it too, if you need it.
I didn't need the delay, but yeah, it has delay for all the channels too, which is great. But in this case, that's the only thing I needed to make sure was at 0. So, yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so a couple of things here too, and
he's like, let's get back to my question. That was like the definition of a rabbit hole. Anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Tangential. Okay, so the drives that I was recording to was it's a Western Digital Black NVMe drive, and I had it in a small rig NVMe enclosure just to be, because I'm like paranoid now. I replaced it. I bought a new Western Digital Black NVMe, and I'm going to be testing a new enclosure. The one thing that worries me about these small rig NVMe enclosures is that it seems to get way too hot in operation. So I'm going to be testing these new Vantech NVMe enclosures that seem to have a much better passive cooling solution with fins. So I'm hoping that will help. One thing I noticed was I took the drive out of the enclosure, and the heat strip that I put on top of the NVMe drive had completely disintegrated, which makes me really nervous.
That's not good. Like, just in case you're wondering, that's definitely not the optimal.
Out of spec.
Optimal, like,
understatement.
What's funny is it's unclear when you buy those NVMe's. When I bought them, I was like, what is this strip for? It doesn't work without it. Just so you know, like, if you see the NVMe in your box will not work without that little rubbery strip that goes in, because it's the heat sink. It pushes the chip against what hopefully is a metal enclosure with. If you look at,
can we see this strip you're talking about?
I don't. No, they're inside. I have to take apart. I'm not going to take it apart right now. So these, you'll see these.
Silicon.
These are little. It's little pieces of silicon, but these little fins. These little fins on it. Let's see if I can get it out of focus. I got to get the product thing set up. I can't. There we go.
So you're saying that the strip is a heat transfer coupling between the outside of the thing and the actual
because all these drives have these little. They have ridges on them. They're metal and they have ridges, and you need to press that up against them so that it uses its case as a heat sink. And if it doesn't do that, it will overheat over time. Like, you will not notice it if you're transferring a 10 gig file or a 50 gig file or whatever over once. You will notice it if you keep the drive running for a long period of time, like a long transfer, or like exactly what Alex is doing. so like the heat of the heat dissipation, and I will say that that's been the problem. I've normally seen it with the T5s fail at about the reason I asked about time, somewhere between 75 and 90 minutes they failed. Like, they just got too hot. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to ask Alexander what drive, and he answered that. And how long did you say yours was, Alexander?
Well, how long I was recording for, or how big the drive? Yeah, I was recording for about 90 minutes approximately.
And then the other question I had was, you said the stop button failed. Did you try it through the software and through the hardware?
I tried the hardware button on the switcher itself and the ATEM control. None of them did anything.
And here's the issue with the T5s. I don't know about what happened with yours. Is they go like this about. So if you have like 0 gigs, 400 gigs, 1 terabyte, right? They'll go like this, and then they just go like that. That's their transfer. So they go from going 500 megs a second to like 40, and they do it in like a minute. And I don't think it's a data transfer issue. I think it's a heat issue. I think that what happens is if you're transferring a large file all at one time, that drive heats up. and then it stops working. And I think that it doesn't matter that you're doing it a lot; it's that you're using it for that period of time. So I do think that it's probably related to heat. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I just remember, and I've come to understand that when I take something apart, when I pull out the small screwdrivers and I decide I'm going to go inside an NVMe drive or anything else, I take pictures literally every single step of the way. And what I've learned is that if when I reassemble, I don't absolutely run those in reverse and get every single thing back in there. Because just as you're saying, Alex, this is just a spongy thing and it doesn't really matter. I won't put it back in. Then suddenly, welcome to failure, because there was a reason they put the spongy thing in there. It was not just so it wouldn't rattle or something like that. It has a real function. And so
there's also two memory cards. There's the SATA and the eSATA and what was the other? There's two of them that look very similar. Just in case you're wondering, they are not the same. They look very similar as memory
NVMe
cards.
And an eSATA.
Yeah, eSATA and the NVMe, and they look very similar, but they're not the same. And if you try to force it in, I'm not saying you should. That enclosure will no longer work. I wouldn't ever claim to be the person that did that test. Anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and just one more quick thing too, Alex. With the NVMe enclosures that you're using, I'm not sure which one you're using, but do you just leave them like sitting flat on a desk, or do you have you 3D printed something to put them kind of this way so that they get good airflow?
My NVMEs are almost all used on cameras, and so they have like a little, they're being held like this, like with a little clamp that then is usually on some kind of Noga arm that kind of sits off. So they're these are not, I almost never use these as drives that are sitting somewhere. They're almost always, attached to the camera. And the reason that I build them is because I'm trying to get the most speed. So these are, running at, 900 megs a second, something like that. And so for more pedestrian stuff, I tend to use the pre-built drives. You were trying to show something, Chris? You're just like fiddling with it?
I was trying to figure out. So this is a little NVMe enclosure, and it opens up. So what is the strip you're talking about? Do I not have the strip?
You don't have the strip. Yeah. How big is that drive?
Well, it's about,
Is it a terabyte? No, is it terabyte or 2 terabytes or 500 megs?
Oh boy, you're getting really personal here. I don't recall.
Take a really large file and try to transfer it on, telling how long it takes before the data rate drops to nothing. Just try it. See how it works.
All right. I'll try.
All right, thanks.
I'll
next
be
question.
back.
Next one comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. Remote live production. What websites do you regularly check out for news and new ideas in this area besides office hours, of course?
Besides office hours is a hard one for me. I mean, I follow a lot of people that do production in Twitter, and I follow a lot of people who are doing production in YouTube. I don't know if there's a lot of websites that I actually refer to in these areas because I show up on so many press things because I've been a press at many conferences. I'm on a lot of email lists from like the PR departments for most of this stuff. So an enormous number of things that are being released and everything else, I'm just getting emails about them. I get 3 or 4 a day about some new product that's coming out. So that's kind of the where I see a lot of that stuff kind of show up. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I keep the homepage of my Google Chrome browser to be Google News on the technology tab.
Right.
And they've got the top tech stories there. I also, on my personal assistant, on the A-Lady, I have the Wall Street Journal Tech News, which is a daily, about a 10-minute or so podcast on tech news, and it has the latest tech news. So that keeps me up to date audio-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly looking for equipment, and most of the time, I think most of the things that I discover is mostly because I'm talking to somebody either here in office hours, or I'm talking to somebody about what they're using, or I show up somewhere and someone brings some cool little new tool, or someone. I will say that Discord is useful because. I mean, it's useful for a lot of reasons, but a lot of people, like if something new comes out that's related to what I do, I tend to get 3 or 4 Discords about, hey, have you seen this? So, and which is great because, getting those alerts makes it easier for me to go find new things. Next question. But to go back to this, number one thing that I do is office hours. It's being in this conversation, having people ask questions and talking to folks here is probably 90% of my keeping track of things. Go ahead. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada comes in off of a QR code question link. Smart rig versus small rig. Best bang for your buck versus better for the outside.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have to say that the small rig stuff is so comprehensive. They have something for just about everything. And I can't compare it to smart rig, but I can compare it to my Tilta stuff that I've got tacked on my FX3. I bought Tilta because I thought it was a good choice. But it's kind of limited in what it can do, and the price is substantially more. So my callback on this would be small rig is inexpensive, best bang for your buck, and they cover just about everything.
Yeah, I mean the smart rig. The only thing I could find with smart rig is really the audio interface. So that's a different kind of a slightly different thing. So Saramonic makes a smart rig that's an audio interface. I didn't find another rig that was that would compete with small rig. But yeah, there's the Moment rig looks really interesting that we saw in the Apple stuff. But I think that almost all the rigs that I'm using around my phones are small rigs. And I agree with Mitchell that they're really well built. They're really well thought out. I do think that I'm going to end up moving to the more generalized one because I have I have this growing stack of them that were the last phone that had a rig, and I'm just like, I need to eventually just buy one that will rule them all. It is nice though because you can throw it in your pocket. I mean, the one that's custom to the phone, you're able to just kind of throw in your pocket and pull it back out, and it's not so riggy. But I may switch over. We'll see. Next question.
Khalid Al-Jamaya of House of Saudi Arabia. Have you heard of Orion? It's an app that turns your iPad into an HDMI monitor, and he's got a link to it there. I thought that's an awesome app, and I wanted to share it with the community. So,
yeah, this is a great app. I have it on my iPad. I was going to try to show it, and I realized I just didn't know exactly how to get all the inputs in and outs to show it to you through the mix. But there's a couple of them that are there. So Orion is kind of a straight monitor, so it'll turn it into a monitor, and you can, you got some levels, you've got a couple other things there. There's another one. Let me see if I can find it really quickly that I got right around the same time as Orion. It is really exciting that that a lot of these apps, and with the new OS, they're becoming more accessible. See if I can find it really quickly here. I think it's.
Does it use just a generic HDMI to USB?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using the. With Orion, I am using the Blue Condor. It's a relatively inexpensive one. I think that the other one that I've been using is the what's called Video Assist, and it is much more involved and expensive. so that's the Orion one I think is relatively. I don't think it's very expensive. But the Video Assist has got a lot more tools to it as far as capture goes, and a lot of other bits and pieces that you can look at. So look at that one as well. I can't remember how much it was, but it was more than the average iPad app.
I think it's a download free, and then it says in-app purchases. So if you unlock it, I think there's cost. But I think you can
for Orion
without that. For Orion, yeah,
I think it's free to download.
You have to pay for the power button.
Yeah, it just says get it. In the App Store, so you can at least try Assist, it. Maybe that watermarks it.
Yeah, Video Assist. It was Video Assist has got a lot more tools that are taking advantage of that stuff, but it is $100. So, but it's got lots and lots of camera tools and pickup. They put a lot more into it, but it also at a much higher price for that vertical. Courtney.
Yeah, it's strange that they're using Video Assist because that's a trademark of Blackmagic for their monitors called Video Assist.
I don't know. Eventually, they'll probably change the name eventually when Blackmagic watches this
episode.
this thing. They'll be like, "What?" Yeah, but it's called Video Assist. It's on there. It's $100. They probably are programmers that don't know that there is a Video Assist thing. It could be hard to really have a copyright that would hold up for Video Assist only because it's been
a term of art for so long.
Yeah, that'd be pretty hard to protect. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer, Viera, Florida, USA. Is there an office hours that covers creating an AWS virtual machine and setting it up to receive SRT? Thanks.
That seems like a good lab So, like an office hours lab. So let's throw that into the second hour suggestions, and we'll find a place to put it. But I think that would be a great lab. Next question.
Next one comes from Chester Sweeney in Los Angeles. This is another QR code submission, by the way. I keep seeing Tascam mixers. Are they half as good as Behringer or Yamaha when it comes to things that last almost forever?
Go ahead, Alex.
I've used many Tascam products over the years, and they're generally pretty solid. I've also used Yamaha mixers, and those are good too. Just depends what we're talking about. Are we talking analog or are we talking digital? Because both companies have their own offerings for both of those types of mixers. And it really depends. With Tascam, you want to make sure that you are getting a product that has their higher quality mic preamps, which they're marketing. I can't remember what it stands for, but look for HDDA preamps. Those are their higher bandwidth, better quality mic preamps. The available headroom on their preamps really varies from product to product. Their analog model series, like the Model 12, 16, 24, they're pretty neutral sounding preamps. They don't have a ton of gains, so they might not be the best option for a low output dynamic microphone. However, some of their other products, like and I have one here, the Tascam Mixcast, which is a little 4 mic input product that kind of competes with the Rodecaster for podcasts. That thing has 66 dB of gain, and the Tascam Portacapture field recorders are really good. Those have a lot of gain on their preamps. So those are newer products, though. So and they're clearly advertised for podcasters. So if that's what you're trying to do, and you've got demanding microphones, those are the ones to probably use for Tascam.
Go ahead, Bill.
It seems to me that once upon a time, a brand was a brand. Now, Tascam came out of an old company called TIAC that was really big in reel-to-reel recorders and things like that. And their Tascam line was kind of developed as they were starting to move into the digital space. The thing, and I reflect on what Alexander's saying, and I agree with it, these products, these brands, kind of can change and morph over time. Something like a Marantz brand that used to be at the really top of the old stereo era can be bought out or sold, just the name itself, and can end up being on a midline or even a low-end line. So I think the advice you're getting from Alexander to kind of look at the reviews of that particular model and see whether that company is aiming it at the low, medium, or high end of the thing, because you'll see the same brand name on products at all 3 levels or price points. Makes it a little more difficult to just say, oh, if it's that brand, it must be fabulous. Well, maybe. But you don't know.
I think there's often an argument for a lot of brands will have sub-brands that they put less expensive things into, and I really think that's a smart idea, because I think that it is a Focusrite is a good example of their lower end stuff is stuff that frustrates me a lot, and their higher end stuff is stuff I use all the time, and it's but it's hard because they just made it a product vertical, but I think that it would make sense for Focusrite to be maybe having Focus okay. Focus, maybe not focus wrong, but there's Focus right, and then there's Focus. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, Tascam. We've had Tascam mixers, analog mixers for eons, it seems like. And this one, this is the 16, and it's $800. So I think it's kind of pricey compared to what you can get, down here from Mackie or Behringer for, about half that price. So. In a similar analog with USB outputs on it, with A to D on the outputs, with an analog mixer on the front end. So they've been a fairly, middle of the ground, middling product for years. Not high end, not low end, but right in the middle.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and actually, I realized I went on a tangent about preamps and didn't specifically talk about the longevity of the product. I can say that as someone who's used Tascam and Yamaha products for a long time, and I've seen these things last for decades in studios, not just analog stuff, but I still even see really old Yamaha digital consoles in some universities and their broadcast programs that students use all the time. So they do have a good longevity, and I've had really good luck with them. And yeah, I mean, if you're looking for field recorders, affordable stuff, I would stay away from the Zoom H series stuff. The Portacapture device for a little bit more money is significantly better quality.
Quick reminder that, of course, you can ask questions throughout the hour. So you can jump into Makana and ask those questions. Make sure to vote on the questions so we have a good sense of what order you'd like us to work on it. We tend to spend a little more time in the front part of the hour and a little less time on the questions on the bottom part of the hour because we've decided that the producers have made a decision. So get those questions in and make sure to vote on those questions so that we understand where you want them. And if you are not in Makana, you can ask questions in askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. You can put it in 24/7. So anytime you think of something, just go to askofficehours.global and we'll feed it in. Next question.
Steve Uroff at Madison, Wisconsin comes up next, and the question is, my Vizio OLED TV is great at perfect blacks, but at about 1 to 10% brightness, I see an unevenly lit irregular patch across all sources and dark scenes. Is there any action I can take to even this out?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
You know, what's interesting about your question, Steve, is that a little tidbit, there's only about 4 manufacturers out there that make the flat panel OLED displays. So what distinguishes one from another, one brand like Vizio from, say, Sony, are how they process the electronics in it. And I suspect that what your, with all respect, the lower-priced Vizio is doing is it's less than best processing on the video blacks. If I were to compare that to my Sony, which with almost the same flat panel display in it, I have perfect blacks all the way down to 1 or 10%, no problem.
Go ahead, Courtney.
This sounds a lot like burn-in. Did you buy this OLED TV from a dealer where it may have sat on a showroom floor with a permanent little logo or something across the bottom of it? Because if this appears on all screens and all channels down at low brightness, like just a difference in shade in an area, it sounds like burn-in. There's not really a whole lot you can do to it. There's ways to exercise the pixels, but generally, once it's burned in, there's not much that you can do about it. And if you don't run your OLED at full brightness, if you're going to be watching things like CNN or anything that has, persistent lower thirds or a logo or in the corner all the time, because you will see little patches on other shows now.
Yeah, I decided a while ago that I just wasn't willing to deal with the issues around OLED, even if it looked really, really great, mostly because of these issues of burn-in. And there's range stress, when it comes to a battery powered car, range anxiety. And for me, it was burn-in anxiety. I had an OLED, and I had this. We had one in the office that had a note on it, like "Do not leave this on. Do not." And it was like so much thought process around not leaving that monitor on that I was like, I just don't want to. I don't want one of these. Go ahead, Chris.
The last real job I had, Courtney mentioned burn-in, something on from a showroom floor. I sold TVs in the mid '80s, and the guy I worked for, he would take the obviously old CRTs. He would always open the TVs from the bottom, and he had invested in the same cardboard stapler that they used to staple close the heavy duty cardboard boxes with big CRTs in them. And he had no shame in pulling the TV out, putting it on the floor, putting it back in upside down and stapling it and selling it as brand new. Yeah. And it really bothered me. I was like, you're kidding. Okay, your store, do what you want.
Right. Ouch. Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
I took some time to try to look into a couple of the, audio video forums about the about the Vizio OLEDs in particular. It looks like they took a 3-year pause at some point in manufacturing OLEDs at all, because the first ones that came out had quality issues, and that the new ones are supposedly doing better as far as processing goes. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, and remember, it's not just processing. So when you're buying a more expensive monitor, it means that it went through a more rigorous test process. And when you're buying a less expensive monitor, they got the ones that didn't get through that test process. A lot of times those monitors on the really expensive one were made at the same factory with the same specs, and they just didn't. And the ones that are cheaper were like their room for error was higher. than the ones that were that are the very high end ones. And so it's, that happens a lot of times, like with chips. When you think about why is a chip rated as this or that or the other, they all came out of the same wafer. It's just that one passed this level and another one passed another level. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm not bragging, but I paid almost $4,000 for the Sony OLED when I first got it, and I'm sure that the Vizio was substantially less than that for all the reasons that Alex just mentioned.
Yeah. Although when you're watching most streaming, you wouldn't know because it's all macro blocked anyway. Not that I'm bitter. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mandy Van Cleve in Monroe, Ohio, another QR code submitted question. Thank you for the tip about mono audio that resolved a long-standing issue in Zoom when listening to only one AirPod. I switched to mono audio and I haven't noticed the issue since. Is this a common problem or something Zoom should fix?
Go ahead, Bill.
So once upon a time when I was starting out in audio, I thought, well, mono is so simple. I mean, it's got to be easy. It turns out mono is not that easy. And I think it may be in part because we come from a world where stereo is so popular. So you end up with this left and right different signal. And then you want to listen to it on one thing. So you think, well, I'll just collapse it. But there's all sorts of things that happen when you combine two sides of a stereo signal into mono, not the least of which, if you want to go down a small rabbit hole, is the pan law about panning to the center two things that were set up and recorded to be in the sides. Mono is a little more complicated. And one of the things I've noticed, I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so fond of loopback, to be able to take two signals and to literally, rather than just summing them dumbly, kind of combine them into one output channel so that I can feed something like an IFB. I found that was much more useful than my old days young self who would just say, I'll take a Y cable and plug it into one and then make it into two, or two, worse, and make it into one. You also have issues like phase cancellation. If the two signals that you're feeding into the mono are a little out of phase, you can have all sorts of comb filtering and weirdness that happens. So it takes a little study to do mono in the world well. But if you can, it makes things so much simpler.
Next question.
Moving to Douglas Carmichael on the next one. The local electric co-op where I live will be offering symmetrical fiber service in the summer of 2024. Currently, I have 1 gigabit up and down, 1 gigabit down and 50 megabits up. Would there be any benefit to 2 gigabits up and down versus 1 gigabit up and down for remote production?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Douglas, if what you have is working for you, and 1 gig down and 50 meg up is pretty darn good. The only thing you're going to find if you keep searching for something else is probably problems. So I would stay with what you have.
Go, Bill.
Yeah, the one thing that I would say is that if you do a lot of uploading, if you're feeding content to somebody, the fact that you can double your upload bandwidth may turn out to be useful to you in a business use case where you're producing content and need to get it up to someplace fast. That's the one thing I would look at.
Yeah, I'd agree with Bill. I have a 1 gig at home. I have a 1 gig down and 40 up, and the 40 up kills me all the time. Like, it's just like, oh, it's going to take so long. Like, I downloaded last night, I downloaded a 330 gig file to do some work on. So that took my 1 gig about 4 hours to bring down. It didn't go a full 1 gig. It was running at 200 or 300 megs a second for 4 hours to bring down this 330 gig file. I am not going to be able to upload it again. Like, in the time frame, I'm going to have to find somebody with a faster connection than I have, or fly it down to get it there on a drive. It would be astronomical a day to or more to upload it. So that's the problem. Go ahead, CJ.
I was so excited when I moved into somewhere that had a 1 gig symmetrical connection, and then the first job that I did where I was trying to. It wasn't a feature length anything, but I was trying to get the deliverables to the client. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't my internet that was the bottleneck. It was what service was I using. And so that's why what service you're using, if you're using a Dropbox or a Google Drive, you're not going to get nearly the kind of speeds that you get with a Frame.io. Yeah. So just keep in mind your whole pipeline. You might not be the bottleneck if your speeds get that fat.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Google and Dropbox for production with any files of any size are like, oof, Like it just makes you sad. Frame.io will saturate your line. So whatever your line will do, Frame.io will fill it. The one that I was downloading yesterday was Aspera, which is a kind of a more industrial version of that, which does the same thing. Like I'm going to take up all the bandwidth that you have. You're not going to do anything else, but we're going to get the file down as fast as we can. So also note that if you're doing, like I'm careful of not turning Aspera or Frame.io on while I'm doing the show because I know that they'll clunk the show if I do that. Next question.
Next one comes from Funchak Dorji in Dharamshala, India. Greetings. I was asked to typeset a messed up style Word document. Is there an AI solution where I can run the doc, which is 32 pages, into a fix the styles AI type thing? Thanks.
I'm curious what you mean by styles. So if what you're looking for is the actual styles of every object in there, if they're and I will say this is really actually an important conversation related to of stuff. I think that typically if someone gives me something, everything's everywhere, and they just bolded things and they just made this bigger or whatever, I will admit that on a 32 something quote unquote that short, I would probably find that the path of least resistance would be to convert it to a text-only document and then bring it back into a non-text-only document. And then I would go through and select things. And the first thing I would do is on the first couple pages, I would define styles. So if you're talking about the styles being all messed up, I very carefully, and I don't use Word, but in Pages, I very carefully set my styles. So this is my header. This is this. This is the body. This is the captions. This is and I make sure that as I go through my document, I never hit bold. I never make characters bigger. I never do anything. I set a style and I live by those styles. And if I don't want to, I change those styles. But I never, ever, ever do something to the text itself so that it's running free, because that is the heart of unhappiness. The heart, like just of like a document. And I used to be, before I did video, I did pre-press, and so my and I did design for documents and stuff like that. And so you get very, very religious. In Quark Express, we had all this processing that we did and everything else. But that's super important. Once you do that, now everything is quick. Like, I don't like the look of that. You change the entire document at one time. I don't like this. You change the entire document. But try to be rules-based when you approach those things. But at 32 pages, which, again, I would consider a relatively short document, I would probably, muscle through. It'd probably, to redefine all the styles, it'd probably take me about 90 to 120 minutes. To get it to be like, this is everything we want on a 32-page document, assuming that you have a lot of variation. If it didn't have a lot of variation, then it would probably take me half an hour. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, text is not text is not text. And I think part of the part is there's a basic ASCII character set that the entire world's supposed to understand. That is the flattest, lowest common denominator of text. But it doesn't do very much in terms of, bolds and underlines, and how does it handle italics, and what about superscript and subscript, and does it get all that stuff? And the answer is often no. So there's kind of a mezzanine format in between called RTF, or rich text format, that is a little more, it's a little less fully compatible with everything, but it'll carry some of the basic typesetting information. But then you get up to the specifics that companies have programmed into their documents that'll let them do all the really fine typesetting stuff. I mean, I need to do equations, and I need to have superscript and subscript. I don't know. The same thing.
And I'm guessing that if you got this and it's all messed up and it's 32 pages, it probably is not the. I get what you're saying, but it probably is not the challenge there.
Yeah, but I agree with Alex that you strip out, the only way to really deal with it universally for every user is to strip out everything down to just plain ASCII set, and then set it in whatever you're going to use it for. That'll get it right. Asking it to translate from, old word perfect to something else.
Getting back to erasing everything is usually the best. You think that it'll take longer. It will not. It will be much faster to just get everything out of there and go back and fix it. The only time that's not the case is not that I'm bitter, but if you cut and paste out of Discord and put it into text edit and then hit text only, you just get a clump of words. Like it's, so there are limits to this. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, this kind of falls into what I call being smart but not intelligent. And so a lot of times people, and the key to what Alex just said there is that, you have to really understand how the software works, and understanding how things like headers or style guides work is a huge benefit. Like if you take something like PowerPoint, where you have, I can't remember what they call them in Keynote and PowerPoint. It's the template screen, I never know what anything is called. But if you start changing things inside, if you don't do it in the master slide, I think it's called the master slide. If you don't set up your styles right in the master slide, changing things on a 32-page document or a 32 slide, a slideshow is really hard. But if you understand how, and again, in a slide deck, it's called a master slide, and the same thing goes for a text document. You have to set up those style guides. And I would bet that less than 10%, maybe as low as 5% of the people that use Word, maybe even less than that, come to think of it, even know what I'm talking about. Yeah. They just see a word and they go, oh, I want this to be bold.
Or I want it to be 42 points instead of 24
then
points.
Then I go to the next page. I go, here's another header. Make that one. Wait, what size did I make that? I made that 42 bold. Exactly. Okay, come down here. And then go to scroll. No, you have to set up those things. Yeah. And very, very few people understand that. So what Alex is saying is spot on. You set up the framework first, then flow your text into it.
Yeah. It just fixes, and it's especially when you decide you want all the headers to be slightly different. Like it's just.
Can I say one other thing? Yeah. This is why I bought my first computer. I was very late to the computer world. I bought my first computer in November of 1989. And I was working on the Computer Chronicles show, and somebody came in showing Aldous Persuasion, and he did the demo where he's like, and I'm going to change the header, and it's changed on every slide.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. I was like, I might have to learn these computer things.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Dan Huber in Erie, Pennsylvania. And Dan says, I have a reconstruction project for our basketball and event center. I need to install displays in the locker rooms. They're fairly close to the showers, and I'm concerned about moisture and humidity. Any experience installing in wet environments?
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, I've seen that done before, and one name comes up all the time is Peerless. They make a lot of great outdoor speakers that are armored or at least water resistant. I don't think anything is actually waterproof. And oh, by the way, while I'm at it, for all you Christmas folks that are buying flat panels, please don't mount them over your fireplace. That's a rookie move.
The putting them in a wet environment, of course, you may want to think about enclosing them, and then also being able to have some kind of way to evacuate that air around it if you really want to push on it. But what I would say is, don't spend a lot of money on the monitor and have a budget to replace them. I mean, it is not going to. Every place that I've worked, I used to work at a YMCA a long time ago, and we replaced them like another life ago. I was a fitness instructor of all things. Anyway, so they went through the monitors once a year. They just took them all out and put them new ones in because they just slowly disintegrated. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. Buy the cheap monitors, put them on the walls. Don't put them in the showers, but in the locker rooms, okay. Don't enclose them in anything because the openness of the monitor will actually let the heat of the monitor will evaporate the moisture off the boards. But if you enclose it, it's going to trap that moisture inside. So just like you said, make a budget. Get the $200 ones at Best Buy when they're on sale, and when one zaps out, replace it with another one.
Next question.
Next one comes from Stefan Fischer of Würzburg, Germany. And the question is, what makes the files of screen recording so large compared to other video data? For example, on a DVD, which is 4.7 gigabytes max, I think I reach hundreds of megabytes very soon with poorer quality than on a DVD.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, if you're just recording the pixels on a screen, you have no chance to use any of the superb and amazing compression schemes that they do. And to make it real simple, I mean, if the next 40 pixels are black, you can go black, 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 and describe each one. Or you can do a little algorithm that says black 40, stop, and that describes exactly the same thing. So that's kind of a really dumbed down version of compression and encoding. And if you're using none, just capturing all of, you don't get any of that. So it's going to be the max size file.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and if you're doing, it depends on what kind of screen recording you're doing. If you're doing screen recording from your computer and you've got a 4K display or something, it's having to try and compress that 4K down in real time to a frame to stay up, because and your computer's having to deal with putting images on the screen and capturing and compressing them and putting them on the hard drive at the same time. Better solution is just to get a HD recorder, outboard recorder, run your HDMI output through it, hit the button, it'll do H.264 recording in real time at about 10 megabits, which is pretty good. A lot of the screen recorders don't compress that much, as Bill was saying. It'll tries to do interframe compression, not intraframe compression, so it doesn't do long GOP compression in software. And so it ends up with much larger file size. Of course, you can take those larger file sizes and compress them down if you need to send them to someone. Use compressor or some other application that will take a video file and recompress it into a different format.
Yeah, if you're using kind of a built-in system, now QuickTime will do it in H.264 or ProRes, but if you do it but it'll be very, very large file, because again, it's just grabbing onto all the data, and oftentimes it can be a much higher resolution than what you need. ScreenFlow by Telestream and Camtasia will both do an intermediate file that's very small, and it actually will then compress only the way you need it to. The advantage of a screen capture program like ScreenFlow is that it separates your mouse from what you're doing. So if you want to capture the what you're doing and have the mouse be separate, so that you can make it bigger, you can have keystrokes appear over it, you can do all kinds of things in their editing package. So you get a lot more out of it. I admit I never use that. I think that it's great, and I always think that I should use it, but then I just end up, I have my computer plugged into a Pix 240 we talked about earlier, and I like recording, and I hit record. I have a big screen, I hit record, I record it. and the reason I do that mostly is because I oftentimes am showing graphics applications that will drop frames if I'm trying to screen capture while I'm doing it. So it just looks like another monitor to the computer, which makes it the performance a lot higher. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Carlos Rojas in Washington, D.C., returning to the subject of repurposing an iPad as a monitor. What's the earliest model or version that allows this feature, or is there even an external device the panel can recommend? Go ahead, Jason.
Ooh, I looked far and wide for this. As far as native support on Mac OS, it's really going to depend more upon the.
It's when the first USB-C was out, and I think that was 2018.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So that would be the iPad Mini 6th generation.
I don't know if it's iPad Mini. I wouldn't use an iPad Mini for that, but I have the Pro. I think the Pro was the first one out that had the USB-C. So the Pro 2018, I think, was the first USB-C one, I believe, or the 20, because I have a 2018 right here. So I think that's the one that was the first one out there. Next question.
Next question comes from Robert Sababity in Poland. All my cameras are Panasonic, for example, Panasonic sensors, just for ease of setting white levels and colors. I now have the opportunity to buy some micro four thirds, I guess, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, 4K. Will color matching and white level setting be a challenge?
Typically, there'll be much less of a challenge than the Panasonic ones. Now, you're doing just white balance, and that's fine. Once you have a Blackmagic camera, if you're going into a Blackmagic switcher, you now have all the controls that a Blackmagic switcher has. You have kind of a DaVinci style controller that allows you to affect color, which is super useful. So I think it'll be much easier. You have more control, and with great power comes great responsibility. It's easier for you to screw it up. But I think that you can, but overall you have more control, but it might be harder if you dig into that control too far. Next question.
David in London do you have any suggestions for arranging a visually engaging two-person video podcast in a compact living space?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, there's different ways of shooting this, and we've talked about this in the past, but the way I do it in my space is just because I'm also in I use my home studio, so I got to make that space work, and I have a bit of a rectangular room, so I've got a couch, and then I've got the guests that usually sit on the couch, and then I've got the host that sits on a chair opposite that. As far as visually engaging, colored lights help. I usually try to put something behind the subject to create some kind of separation between the foreground and the background. So that's what I usually try to achieve. I'll show more of that later in the second hour. But of course, you can also do round table, where two people are sitting across from each other and do sort of the over-the-shoulder shot where you try to get as much of their face dead on as well, because I know, like Alex Lindsay has said in the past, you want to get the far corner of the eye there and not do that sort of old school broadcast side profile thing.
Yeah, and I will say that, we can do it. I actually prefer doing things online where we're looking straight at both people. I know but you can definitely do it. I agree with everything Alex said otherwise. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. What differentiates sound devices noise assist technically from a gate?
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I'm pretty sure the noise assist stuff is their own secret sauce. So technically, I don't know what they're doing there, but it's probably some kind of broadband noise reduction. It's not just a noise gate, as you say. One thing I want to make clear too is there's often the term noise gate is often interchanged sometimes with downward expansion, and those are two different ways of pushing down background noise. A noise gate is typically it's moments like this. I wish I had a telestrator, but basically the noise gate is going to be a much larger ratio, and it's going to be more abrupt. So, for example, if in live sound, if you've got a drummer and you've got them smashing on a tom, you want that noise gate to basically close really fast, and that doesn't work really well for speech. So a downward expander is much more gentle, so it's much more natural, and it's not going to cut off the tail end of a word or the beginning of a syllable.
Right. And the difference between all of these, the dynamic controls, whether it's an expander or a gate, and the and noise assist. Noise assist is actually removing noise. Like, it is a very complicated algorithm that is analyzing the background noise, looking at the foreground noise, and actually removing that noise. It's not cutting off. It's not just going. What you'll hear with an expander or a gate is you'll hear noise while someone's talking, and then you'll hear no noise because it went down. It pushed it down because nothing else was going on. So it's a very dumb device in the sense that it just goes, okay, nothing's happening right now. I'm going to make it quiet, and that's great if that's all you have. What noise assist is doing is actively taking out that background noise all the way through the entire thing when you're talking and when you're not talking, which is just a much more powerful solution. Next question.
Next one comes from John Fisher in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. For your information, new mini PC from Mealy, M-E-L-E, out now. Overclock 4C with an Intel N95 and up to 32 gigabytes of RAM with active cooling. It's got a fan. It's $329 manufactured suggested retail price, $265 after the coupon that's on Amazon now.
I don't know why, but when he's listening to it, all I wanted to say is cheese grommet. Anyway, so it's cheese, so it looks good. Looks good. It's great. Wesley Dale. Anyway, next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez in, why is that not showing up on my screen here? There we go. Oklahoma City. Thank you. Tascam Model 16 is not only an analog mixer, it's also an audio interface, and it has a built-in recorder. It's 3 devices, three in one, hence the $800 price tag. It's great for doing live performances that can also be live streamed.
Still feels like it's a lot of money for what it's doing. Like, there's a lot of things that at $800 to record and to be able to have an audio interface that has a built-in recorder. I mean, at $800, you are really close to a MixPre 3. At that point with noise assist, as we just talked about, I think that you're close there. Yeah, go to Courtney.
And I would look at it. I don't know if it does local record of multi-channel ISOs. Since it's an analog mixer, it may not be recording all those analog channels separately. It may just be recording the 2-channel stereo left and right that is converted to USB. It depends on the USB converter that they built in there, whether it's multi-channel or not. But a lot of those that offer recording only record the left-right mix out internally.
So you're not sure if it's recording all the tracks?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't have that. But since it's an analog mixer, it may not be converting each track to digital before it mixes them down. It may only be recording the mix track. Some of those cheaper mixers, some of the cheaper analog mixers that have USB out, don't deliver all the channels ISO'd to the USB interface. They only deliver 2 channels in, 2 channels out.
But at $800, I'd be really tempted to spend a little bit more and have a mixed preamp rather than a mixer. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, the model series does multi-track recording to both SD card and as well as the USB interface.
That's great. We're going to be talking about our studios here in just a second. Just a quick reminder, of course, that we have a new panelist meeting tomorrow. Now, I think a lot of people are confused. You don't have to come to all the meetings. We have a meeting every week, but it's not for all of you. So the panelist meeting is tomorrow. The new panelist, if you're interested in being a panelist, I'll hang out with you at 9 o'clock tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. If you are already a panelist, come to the next week. If you're new to volunteering, you come to the next week. If you want to talk about volunteering, you come to the next week. So they're there. You don't have to come to all of them, but you'll see announcements go out for that. So stay tuned. And now we're going to jump into the second hour. Welcome back to the second hour. And if you've got questions as you see us start to work through these, go ahead and throw those in. We're going to talk a little bit. We do this every once in a while. I don't think we've done it for maybe a year or even more, where we kind of show what's interesting is what's on the other side of these cameras, because a lot of times, it looks like, we just are sitting here in our house. It's rarely the case. So anyway, I'm going to let the panelists start to kind of put together their pieces here, and I'm going to try to wire mine in. I have it here. I'll try to show you a little bit about what I'm working on there. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in while I put my last little wire in. I just got to connect it up. No, everyone's like, we're just going to wait for Alex to do this. So, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'll dive in. What the heck? So, rigs. So I'm sitting in a spare bedroom where I live, and let me just cut to the shot. So we'll go there first. So this is kind of my setup, and I'll kind of go through and describe it just generically and overall. On the left, I have a monitor that I run Discord because I want to get information from that over the course of the time. There's my hand. You can see it. There's one of my two little facial fill lights. My main key light is overhead with a grid on it. You can see just the bottom of that at the top end of things. That's my left-hand monitor. My right-hand monitor over here shows me the general shot that's going out. My gallery is in the teleprompter there. My laptop sits before, and the laptop drives the whole thing. It's the only computer I have in this system. I also have two additional external things, an iPad over here on the right that is hooked up through HDMI into the ATEM mini switcher, which is sitting right up there. So if I were to change to my shot, I just tap this and it can go there, or to the, that's the iPad over here. So often if I'm using Keynote to show examples of something or go through a slide deck for additional information, that comes in on the right. All of them through the Blackmagic ATEM mini. And then my Rolls mic mute sits under here. I talked about that a lot. Let me go back to the wide shot. And so this hides here quietly under the corner of the desk, and through the whole course of the show, that's all I do is just keep my finger on that. And when I take it up, I get cut mid display. And there's something we can't show you that is normally right in front of me. That is a show view that is proprietary, and that is the system. I try to keep my eyes as much as possible on the center monitor, which is my kind of eye contact monitor, but you can see above that the bigger monitor. My eyes are drawn up there because, I can see more information and I can read things like text up there. But when I do that, if I am on, and this has been one of the things to learn how to do for office hours, if I do it, I'm looking up there. So, I don't know if that looks like I'm looking to heaven for guidance or something like that. It's much better if I use the smaller monitor in the center because that helps me make eye contact. So those are the little subtle things as you set up yourself and you're working with lighting to try to make it look as good as possible. But there's a lot of complexity to get a simple little shot. And I think almost everybody you'll see going through this, you'll be surprised at how much time and effort we took to try to make it look as good as possible.
Good, CJ?
Yeah, so I took what was a 15 by 10 kind of mechanical room in my basement where the water heater and the furnace live. And I decided that I was going to build an office into it, and then slowly wanted to look better in meetings. And before you knew it, I was getting a lot of guidance from office hours. So what you're seeing now is just a view of me at the desk. I actually set up two iPhones mirroring to Apple TVs. So this is my super source. So what you'll see in front of me is I've got my, over here on the right, I've got scopes and a little focus check where I can see my eyes to make sure that, because I don't have a nice fancy Sony camera. In front of me here is where I'm using my my research. So when there's a question that I'd like to make sure that I'm getting right, I do a little bit of homework before I answer it. Over here is usually a Makana chat. And then up on this screen is the view out of the ATEM. Here on the desk, ATEM Extreme ISO, the Fenwick cord control, and then a bunch of Stream Deck buttons. And then what you see up here is an old iPad Pro from 2018, I think, that's mirroring up the gallery view so that I can look into everybody in the teleprompter, and that's just working over Duet. Above me is a little bit of a modified version of something that was an Alex recommendation, which was really just PVC, cheap PVC, half-inch PVC from Home Depot with some diffusion fabric grommeted and then suspended from the ceiling. But yeah, and lots of room treatment. As you can see, I'm trying to make a nice quiet room with no reflection. So between moving blankets and foam, that's what we got.
That's great. All right, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm in my apartment here. Let me just get into my camera switcher here. So I just wanted to point out a couple things. I'm going to go to a wide shot here. I will start with acoustic treatment, which is where I normally start. I have prime acoustic panels pretty much on every surface of this place. On the walls, I've got the cloud panels on the ceiling and various bass traps. I mean, you can see the bass traps behind me in my normal shot, and my lights are all mounted. LED panels are mounted on the ceiling as well, and I have a lot of them. I use Micro Four Thirds cameras. Some of my cameras are point and shoot. I'm trying to standardize on Panasonic Lumix G7s. So my main camera is a Panasonic G7, which I have in front of me, which is annoyingly right in front of my 43-inch quad LG display, which I got to figure out a solution for because it's very annoying. But the LG TV is on a motorized stand, which I can demonstrate there, so you can see it slowly moving up, which is pretty nice. So I can get that monitor completely out of the way there. As far as the video chain is, I've got a ATEM Mini Extreme ISO switcher in front of me in one of those PK stands, so it gets better airflow. You can't really see that. It's behind the Stream Deck here, buried there. I've got 5 cameras in total. One of them is not currently hooked up. My other monitors, I've got 2 27-inch Apple Cinema displays, one on each side of me, which at some point I'm going to get VESA mounted. Then I have a ViewSonic 23-inch touchscreen display here, which is hooked up to a Melee PC, which controls the web interface for my Soundcraft UI24R digital mixer, which is really, really nice. And of course, I never have enough monitors. I'll cut to another shot where you can see let's go to the couch there. I've got RE20s mounted on Elgato low profile mic stands, one on each side of the couch for each guest, and then my client that usually sits in, and this shot's going to be completely blurry when I switch to it. For some reason, the autofocus is completely messed up. He uses an RE27 mic on a low profile, and he sits in a chair over here right next to me. And I'll go back to my shot. I've got a Stellar X2 condenser microphone in front of me, which I'm currently using, and I'm pretty satisfied with. And that's pretty much it. There's no processing, no compression. The only thing I have is a very gentle high-pass filter on my microphone at 65 hertz, so I'm rolling off some of that low end. But other than that, there's nothing else really going on.
Go, Jason.
Oh man, where to start? Okay, I guess I'll follow suit and start with a wide too. A lot of the stuff on the shelf is actually used a lot. One of my favorite things is a bunch of tiny little drawers, and all of the ISO recording that I can do in encoders are down directly behind and below me. Studio monitors, X32, which is what runs all of the sound in the stack of Mac Minis that sensibly runs the studio, and then a whole bunch of lights. Let me see if do I have a Y? Just to do, there we go. So when I sit down, this is what I see. And instead of having entirely too many monitors, I was able to get a 32-inch 4K TV that does quad multiplexing. So I can take any one of those. There's the stack of Mac Minis. The studio's at the bottom, and then there's an OWC additional, whatever they're called, the stackable ones. And from there to Stream Decks, an ATEM, security cameras, and let me think. Oh, yeah. iPad. After that, studio display, 6K Pro with prompter people, little teleprompter right there, 2 combed lights, and then what I'm effectively or lovingly calling the Blackbook Pro, which is not black, by the way. The M3 Pro's not black. That's just all there is to it. Oh, yeah, one more thing. So what do the Mac Minis do? This too is standardized. So all of the meters, where is my super source? All the meters for voice go through one, scopes on the same one. That's an M1. The other one's an M2. And then I've got multi-view all the way down on the bottom. So I can see all of those things in the lower right corner. The one next to that is the X32, which gives me a live sound output of just this microphone so that I can't mess anything up. And that's the long and the short of it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, unlike all the rest of you, I don't really have a separate room designed for a studio. This is my living room, as you can see behind me. So that's the rest of the living room. I did take a picture this morning. I don't have multiple cameras, but we can take a look at what I'm looking at. There's a 24-inch screen here and a 15-inch screen, which is the output of the switcher. Down here, I have the Rodecaster Pro and my amp and my ATEM Mini Pro. There's my mouse pad. Underneath here is the you can't see it because it's really dark. There's 3 computers down there. There's a Dell, and then there's a Melee, and then there's this little J4 that I just keep standing by for additional inputs. I have comms over here on a separate Windows tablet, which is set up for touch. I have my camera is a Canon MX50 Mark II. There's the Moai looking over me, and my lighting is, I have a little light down here. It's reflecting off a white card now to light underneath my hat, and up here I have a Newar 15-inch light panel, which it swings out on this little arm here, and I adjusted. I either waste it into the printer here, which is stacked on top of this wooden console is holding everything here in the corner of my room. And I've used this little wood console to hold my computers for 40 years. So it's gone from starting with a Radio Shack Model 1 to an Atari 800s and then on to PCs. I have a Mac Mini under here somewhere. There's a little speaker, an Anchor speaker right here that I put everybody on when I'm stepped away so I can hear what's going on. But that's what my setup is. Sorry, I don't have all the the camera crew here and the extra cameras to shoot.
He normally does. He normally does.
Yeah, that gave him the day off.
Go ahead, Chris. Can't hear you, Chris.
Okay.
Mute.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's pretty complicated. Let me just sorry, apologize. Here's my setup. It's pretty complicated.
Oh, stop it.
In the center there, you're going to see it's a computer. Now, it's one of those fancy ones that has a screen and the keyboard. And to the right of it in the black, there's a little hard drive and a microphone.
It's impressive. It's impressive.
Off to the side, you can see there's a Ring camera. No, it's not a Ring camera. I think it's a Nest.
I think you should show us what. I know this is the one you use. This is your daily driver, but
this is my daily driver.
What do you use on the weekend? What do you use on the weekend? Show us your weekend trip.
So the reason I say that is that I wanted to do that is this is absurdity. This is really, it's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous that slowly grows. And at the beginning of COVID, actually, I want to. This is interesting to see here. Where's my mouse? Okay, so I'll close that one. At the beginning of COVID, I had to run away, and this is my old edit suite. And the day of the lockdown, I grabbed all the stuff that I needed immediately, and I bailed out of this edit suite. I ended up coming back a few weeks later to grab a few more things, but and then within a couple of days, I was working here, and I can remember Alex was like, I hear something really loud, but that was my RAID sitting on the desk. So I got rid of that. And it does change, and it evolves over time. Currently, and I will say that the desk that I sit at now, I used to look at and go, what kind of a nerd needs to sit there? But what happens is it slowly evolves. It's like, you know what? I do kind of need a monitor for that. And then there was one day where I lost a bunch of recordings, and I was like, I need to have an output of that thing to be able to confirm things. So anyway, you can kind of see it here. And actually, I might even be able to show you here, make sure everything is safe. Yeah. So that's, the Zoom ISO happens up there. This is my editor. And then this is all input and output to the world Zoom. And then I'm currently only using the little camera here. When I moved to my mom's house, I never really got around to switching back to the big one, the 6K, whatever. And then there's a laptop over here. I'll also say, if I can, am I the last one in the list, Alex?
CJ's going to do something, and then I'll.
Okay. I have something else I want to say about planning when it's appropriate. So anyway, but yeah, it evolves slowly over time. That first picture I showed you was really the first week I bought my house, and I had a room that I was like, I put my laptop down. I go, God, this is going to be a fun room one day. Unfortunately, I'm not in that room right now.
Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, and to respond to Dan's question there in the chat, that is a real deal flux capacitor back there behind me. So we're going back in time.
Yeah.
It was just the LEDs were a little bright, and so we there's two sheets of ND taped over it, and then the other one there's the old iMac that's really, really running after dark. So the toasters are flying in the background.
That's great. Let's see here if I can make sure I can. Let's see. This is all it like. Make sure everything's legal. All right. Oh yeah. See, I almost blew it. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I was so ready, and then I realized that I hadn't checked my screens, and I have a screen that has things on it that I can't.
Alex, would you like me to do mine while you're setting things up?
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's no big deal, but I got to show it. Anyhow, my situation was a little different. I have a edit suite, basically. I do editing over here, I do audio over here, and I do zooming right here. And it's kind of messed that up, didn't I? This is the quick side shot of it. I don't have those fancy cameras like you guys have because I put it all into my Sony. But just to give you a quick tour, that is my... He's really good with camera, isn't he? That's my edit suite there with the classic cinema displays. That's where I do all that stuff. And then over here is where I do my audio editing. And over here is my Zoom area. And it's not super complicated or good looking like you guys have. It's two monitors, one on one side, and then another monitor on this side, which I have the Zoom gallery in. The camera has a nice little feel good, or in this case, an Andy Cine 4K, so I can see the waveforms. Above it is the ICANN Interatron, which allows me to see myself, infinity. And above that, inside is my FX-3 Sony. It has a XLR port on the top of it, so I can get the audio direct and always in sequence. There's the ATEM, which we all have. There's the expensive mute button. There's my Stream Deck. And that's pretty much it, except my treatment of the room is a little more involved than maybe most people would be going into a room that already exists. I've got these Sonos ceiling tiles. I've got a treatment on the walls. And behind me, I've got a nice little Varipole that holds a downlight, which sheds a little light on the back here, and a backlight for my hair. And behind that is a little rack with some servers and some other cool stuff in it. So that's pretty much it, guys.
And I think I got mine kind of working here. So, so to give you a little bit of behind the scenes of mine, there's my keyboard. So what I have here, you can kind of see it. There's the second return view here. I have these 5 monitors. This one's not on right now. And then I have this is my telestrator. So this allows me to change colors. So I can change my colors here, and I can make it thicker and thinner, and so on and so forth. And I keep that all there, and that all goes in here. I've got a couple Mac Minis, and so the main ones that I use here is this is a Zoom one, so I can join Zoom there, application, presentation, and telestrator. That way, the advantage of that is that I can cut between things very quickly. So when I'm doing a presentation, if I want to do this and then this, I don't have to go, oh, now I'm going to get out of my presentation and jump into an app. I just cut to the app, and I can leave the app in the states that it needs to have. Sometimes I have 2 app machines like that, so I can jump between different things. As someone who comes out of corporate events, you just kind of feel like every little comma that you put in to jump when you're doing a presentation feels painful. So I just want to be able to cut between things. So that's why all those Mac Minis are there. And then Telestrator, of course, draws over top of all of them. All of these monitors are on, or just about all the monitors are on arms, so I can kind of grab them and move them around a little bit. Because I can move them up and down, and you can see that right now they're not quite aligned. Usually they're pretty well aligned because it drives me a little crazy. I just moved them this morning for something else. So anyway, my daughter paints rocks, and there's my character from Star Wars. But she gives me rocks every once in a while, and I keep a collection of them there. It's my lucky charm. I'm using, there's the Sony that's sitting up there. That's the FX-3. I keep on meaning to put a teleprompter in there, and I have a teleprompter to put in there. What happens is this light is a rig, and I have to lift it up to get the teleprompter in there, and it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, this is the maker pipe. So you can see all the maker pipe connections and EMT rail. This is not safe. I shouldn't do this, and I'm going to put some. It's bowing a little bit. It really is not what I should be doing here. Anyway, but you can see I built kind of a grid up here with the maker pipe, and I put all this. Moving blankets around it. I'm going to make it look shinier at some point, but the moving blanket, I can't use this mic. This is the Stellar. I can't use that mic without those blankets. My room is too high to do that. It's really echoey. Occasionally, I keep this mic here. Occasionally, when I don't feel like having a big mic in front of me, I have this shotgun mic that feeds in, so I can just talk, and it just looks like I'm sitting there, so that I can move this out of the way if I need to. This is the Ultima arm that I use. I have one of these quick releases, which was I don't have the quick release on here. Sorry, usually I do have a quick release. I must have taken it off for some reason. So anyway, this is the Ultima arm. It's actually attached to this table over here. This is kind of my work table. So there's lots of cables that I can go grab and do things with. But this is attached to a different. That way, I don't have any movement. That doesn't do anything other than hearing it hit. It doesn't shake anything. There's the speaker if I'm listening to something, or there's a little melee there that goes into that speaker. So if I just want to have something just working over there, I can do that.
In mono?
In mono, yeah, I know. It's just like, it's usually listening to after hours. Like if I'm going to listen to after hours, that's what that goes through. If I'm listening in stereo, I actually have the little Apple speakers that I have here. So if I want to listen to music, I usually put them through those little speakers there. So I had them laying around, and then charging station. So lots of charging, these little things clamp onto that, which is convenient. I have a lot of power. This is, of course, we were talking about this before. Same thing as Mitch has, the 205, and I really like it. Nice thing about it is if I push this down, you'll see it change, and you won't be. I let go. So this, if I do a talkback, if I'm using that, I don't use it as much for this show, but if I'm using that, I can push that down and not know that I'm not going out to show. This is just this is tied directly into my applications computer. The advantage of that is that I don't need to cut over. I don't need to KVM over to that computer to control it. I just push that button. So once I get my presentation set up, I can just use this to get from slide to slide while I'm doing other things. I have a little KVM down here. It's 8-channel. Works pretty well. It beeped. This is I don't know, Tree Tech or something like that, and it beeped a lot. And so I found that if I opened it, I unscrewed it and tore the speaker out, and then it works great. So it took a little bit of fixing, which was to tear the speaker out of the thing. Then it makes pre, of course. And I think, I got some routing down there, some just random stuff that's there, but I think that's pretty much my little studio there. All right, now let's go ahead and, do we have anybody? Let's see, I got to look here because I covered that up. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, a couple of things I forgot to mention. One thing were my DMX accent lights. I have not all behind me, but I have a total of 17 Orion Orcan 3 Parcans. They're all controlled over ArtNet. I've got a Chauvet DMX to Ethernet converter box. So Luminaire is what controls all my lights. I've got 11 of those behind me there. So that's what they look at. They're really tiny. I need to get those off the floor and mounted on the ceiling because I don't have a lot of space behind me here and I keep tripping and it's an absolute hazard. So that's something that I'm working on. And the other thing is, as far as computers are concerned, my primary one is a Mac Mini M2, which I soon will be adding another Mac Mini to that with a Pro chip. I've got two Melee 2s doing different stuff. And then I also have two very old but upgraded cheese grater Mac Pros also doing various things as well. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, plus one on having the prime acoustics there, soaking up bass. Good move there.
Hey, Alex, I was curious, looking at your shot, it looks like your camera is about 2 desk widths away from you. Is that about
Pretty
right?
much. Yep.
So it's like way out of your range to reach it.
Absolutely. It's way out of my range to reach it. It's about, I think it's about 36 or 40 inches, from me. And the advantage of that is that, and I played with it back and forth, it actually allows me to control my background more effectively because as it moves away, I'm lengthening that lens and I'm cutting away how much background I show. And so I just found that it was like, I've got desks on either side of me and everything. You see a little bit of the desks as it is, but you really, you can see the little corner over here of this desk, which by the way goes up and down, which is very nice. I didn't mention that. But if I move the camera forward and go to a wider angle, I end up with you see a lot more. I just have to think about the background a lot more. The other thing is that I think after using it, I tested it recently after using a Super 35 and a 50. This is effectively a 50 because this is it's a 35 lens on a Super 35 sensor. So that's very close to a 50 millimeter. I think the 50 millimeter looks more natural. I just think it looks, 50 is generally kind of what people often think of as our eyes. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I do feel like I felt like the days that I came in on 35, I felt like, and I used to be on 35 all the time for all of the shows. And I just feel like I like the 50 better as far as just the look.
And so then in terms of inventory, you have the sit stand to your right, you have the workbench to your left.
Yep.
You have a low desk and then a slightly higher desk in front of that one.
Yeah, and I'm
doing research for the build one day.
Yeah, because definitely this is not optimum. I'm sitting in front of a folding table. It's not a. I have 2 folding tables in front of me, and it was going to be a temporary solution until I came over to your house, and I just haven't done that yet.
Is the further one on Apple boxes or something?
No,
why is it higher?
Because I needed more.
Folding tables don't normally have adjustable height.
This one's a foldable. It's like a foldable 4-foot. It's like a party table that has the legs all have little notches on them. You click, 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 click.
Oh yeah, I have some of those.
Yeah, so you can buy them at Costco for I don't know $50 or something. So I have a really nice as nice a folding table as you can have. That's what I get because I attach so many things to it. So I always want ones that are pretty hefty, and so I have a hefty 6-foot folding table. I always find 8-foot folding tables be difficult to work with, and so I tend to not. You only get them at banquet tables.
It's a ridiculous design. I don't know how anybody ever came up with 8 feet. 6 foot is the
6 foot's perfect. Yeah. So
barbarians buy an 8 foot.
I got the work desk thinking that it was much lower than it is, so it's much higher. But it turned out to be perfect. It just was not what I expected. And then I decided, well, the second desk I get, this other one, and both of these are like $150 each. I mean, they're not expensive. The second one I got has a little motor in it, so I can go up and down And that way I could, mostly just so I could align it to the desk. Once I aligned it to the desk, I didn't care anymore. But I have it there. And I go over there and I sit at that little desk when Michael Krasny comes in. Right now he's coming into my house to record Gray Matter. And so, so anyway, so that's what that looks like. Let's go to the first question.
First one comes to us from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. What long, and he's looking for 9-foot, USB-C cable to buy for an overhead webcam? I find either Thunderbolt or just charging cables on Amazon.
Go ahead, Jason.
9 feet is a really annoying length. I have had mixed luck with OWC makes a USB-C extension cable that will allow that actually will carry the voltage and won't completely ruin everything. I would give that a shot.
Yeah, I have. I've found that 10 feet, I think, is the longest I've been able to go. And let me see if I can pull this up here. This is a. Let me make sure I got the right length here. Yeah. Oh, it's 9.9 feet. Yeah, so 10 feet. This is the one that I have. Let me see if I can put this over somewhere I can show it. And it's not, particularly expensive. I'll let, while I get this queued up. Go ahead, Courtney.
I wasn't ready.
Sorry,
I have this one that is a USB-C to USB-C. I think it's about 7 feet. It may not make the 9 feet, but make sure when you're ordering one, because you do find them. This is nice and thick. It's not braided, but the thicker ones you will find are. Make sure it's rated for passing video. Make sure it's listed as a video extension cable or that carries video as well as USB-C data and or power. Because if it doesn't carry video, it's not going to work with your webcam.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just looking up, and so here's one on Amazon. The middle one, Cable Matters, 40 gigabit per second, active USB 4 cable. It's 9.8 feet, 100-watt charging, compatible with Thunderbolt 4 and 3. And I've had a couple of cables that are Thunderbolt 3, and as I moved to better laptops, I found that my Thunderbolt 3 cables were right at the edge of their capacity. So that's $70. So it's a little more expensive, but in terms of signal passing, the fact that the ports on the computers are getting faster and faster, so Thunderbolt 4 certified makes me feel like I'll probably own it longer if I take care of it and get more value out of it.
Yeah, and the one that I use is this. This is the Anopi. This is this one this is what I pack with each one of the Link 360. So in the little case, I have one of these. It's a 10-foot. I haven't been successful at getting the Link 360 specifically to work over 10 feet. So if I go to 15 feet, there's no cable that I found that will reliably run the Link 360. It will work with drives. It'll work with other things. It just won't run the 360 for whatever reason. A couple key things that I look at is obviously the length, but also the bandwidth, and that it is USB 3.2 Gen 2, data transfer. 20 gigs is fine for what I'm doing. I also look for the power, so 240 watts capable. And so this is the one that I've gotten, $21. You can see that the price drops very quickly. So if you're paying less than 20, you're probably not going to get what you need. So and these I've got, I don't know, 6 or 8 of those. I bought two here, but I've got a couple other versions of it. I use the right angle because I'm putting it into a Link 360 and I don't want it to come. Otherwise it hangs out and it creates a larger leverage point on the camera, which I haven't damaged the camera, but I feel like I could. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Stefan, not all cables are made the same. They may not work. And as Courtney pointed out, some are for charging. Some may not work at that length. One thing I do insist on, I think Alex does this too, is, here I got my product shot thing going, is braided cables are fun.
I use braided cables specifically because they don't stick to each other as much. So the technical reason that I use braided cables for most things that I do is because it's easier to wrap them and unwrap them. They tend not to loop up as much. Rubber tends to pull against itself, and so I've become very and I use, like, for my headset one, I don't know if I show that. These are headset extensions by, I think, Ugreen or something like that, and they're metal braided. And what's nice about them is they slide through everything. They just don't really get caught up on anything, which is really nice. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I've had very good luck with, and I've settled on Cable Matters as a brand for a lot of these types of cables. So 3, 6, and 10-foot Cable Matters USB 3.1 Gen 2 cables, 10 gigabytes per second, or gigabits per second is, I believe, all you need for the Insta360 Link. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't need more than that. They do make various other ones. They've got USB 4 ones with more bandwidth, 20 gigabits per second, 40, and so on and so forth. So figure out what you need for the type of device that you need, but Cable Matters has been building pretty good quality cables.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, if you're just going to be using this for your webcam, don't go crazy. The Thunderbolt, you don't need Thunderbolt cables because most webcams come in at actually come in over USB 2. So you can have USB 2 cables, but most of them are qualified for USB 3. But you don't need to get the super high bandwidth if you're just going to be using it as a dedicated cable. Just make sure it does carry video because that's separate two separate wires that are in there that they don't put in there on the really cheap cables that are just designed for charging or simple data transfer.
And at short length, I found that almost every cable works if it has data. At 10 feet, I found that 3.2 Gen 2 is like that's required to run 10 feet if you're going to run specifically a Link 360. I don't know why, but it requires something that needs it. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. During House of Worship last night, I brought in a YouTube video, no sound, restarted the computer, the ATEM Mini, audio hijack, and a loopback. Nothing worked. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Chris.
Tony, I only say this because I've done it myself, and I don't mean to be flippant about it. I have spent entirely too much time trying to troubleshoot audio from YouTube before I find out it was muted in YouTube. I've done it. I've spent way too much time, many times, so I would double check that.
Yeah, and I will say if you're planning to play something back from YouTube, best investment you'll make is Downy. Just get Downy. You take the URL, you throw it in, you download it as a movie, you play it out of there. Do not play things out of YouTube for a show. Like it's just it's not a stable environment. You don't have any controls over how you're playing it back. Anytime I'm doing a presentation, I just go grab the stuff from YouTube, but I go into Downy. It takes seconds. I know it costs some money to do it, but it is so effective. And it's not just YouTube. It's anything with video that you get someone has an HLS based system up there. It'll just grab all the segments and recompile them for you. It's a really, really, like anybody who has, I've used it for, I don't know if I haven't used it recently for this, so maybe they fixed it, but for like LinkedIn Learning, before we were able to download, I used to use this just to pull all the training down so that I could take it on a flight. So it's a really, really effective tool to do that. It sits on the edge of legality, I think, but it's super great. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and make sure if you're in a Zoom session, make sure if you're bringing in YouTube video that you're not bringing it in from the same computer that's hosting your Zoom session that you've got set up for your mic. It's feeding your microphone because Zoom will just take your microphone and it will kind of do mix minus for everything else, so it'll mute the YouTube. Right. Anything else that's on your USB channel into Zoom. So make sure it's on a separate computer. That way you can bring it in separately on your mixer. So that it's not coming through Zoom directly.
Next question.
Dan Huber in Erie, Pennsylvania is up next. What's Alexander using to show volume level behind him?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I am using the American DJ DB Display MK2, and I was turned on to this after seeing that John Preto had one in the background. I think they're about $100. It's nothing special. It's kind of just eye candy, basically.
It's good. It's good eye candy. I really want to get a Duro just to put back there for no apparent reason, but having a good Duro.
Oh, Duro.
Yeah, Duro. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Next question.
That's a pricey, nice, beautiful thing.
When you look at them, though, the action on them is cool. So beautiful that you just like, oh, I really want one of those. Yeah, see, there it is. You see, there's one right there hidden in the background. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Jack Ruppel in Breckenridge, Colorado. Can the Insta360 AI Warp be done with the 360 Link?
I think this is to grab onto I don't think it can, but I'm not entirely sure what the AI warp is. So if you're talking about taking the 360 conform so you can pan and scan inside of it, no. The 360 does its own rectilinear video. If it's something else, I apologize. But that's if I understand what you're asking correctly, I don't think it does. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri says, if you have multiple stations, what are the benefits?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, so you've been looking at things like Mitch, to me, it's a matter of focus. And I had to change. It used to be that when I went into the voice booth, I was doing voiceover, and that's the only thing that was in my mind. So I wanted only tools that were relative to that. Since I found out that I could take care of the noise issues in here, moving out of the voice booth to my desk and multitasking a little here has been a much better solution because I'm in a more open air, more comfortable environment for long periods of time. And so now all I have to do really is just substitute in my TLM 103 for the Sennheiser mic that I used during the course of the show. And so, but I do have to think a little differently. So to me, it's the setup of monitors that switch. I think you can do it either way, but for me, the answer is focus. Are you interested in just focusing on one task at a time and optimizing for that? Or can you handle a system that can go into different states for different things and become equally comfortable in that multi-mode environment?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I've got a variety of workstations that I use. This one is the only one I use for Zoom. And after office hours is over, I shut everything down here and I move to a laptop, which is right over there. And that's my daily driver. That's where I sit and answer all my email, do work on any projects I have to do, and it's a gaming laptop. And it doesn't have all the rest of this media stuff surrounding it, so it's easier for me to concentrate on a single screen. And upstairs, I've got a music studio with an electronics shop, basically, that has another bunch of 4 or 5 computers and multiple screens and 3D printers, and it's surrounded with junk and gack. But I get horrible Wi-Fi up there. I mean, I get Wi-Fi up there, but it's not great. I can't get high bandwidth up there, so that's why I do it this show from down here rather than the shop.
Yeah, and this is just this is where I work. Was when I leave their house, the most I will take out of this room to work in is an iPad, and usually that doesn't even happen. It's like a phone. Like the rest of my life is pretty analog, and so like everything is contained. And for me, from a mental health perspective, I find that to be super useful for me. I'm very modal. If I walk out of the room, I'm not working very much. I mean, I might look at my phone every once in a while or whatever, but I'm pretty much out of the mode, and I walk back in and I go back to work. And I think as someone who's worked from home for a long time, I just had to have for me, I had to have a modal state of this is my office. I'm going to the office to work. I'm leaving the office. I don't do a lot of personal stuff here either. Like this is my office, and I do office things here. I'm also very used to monitors, like lots of monitors, and I really can't go back. Like I just can't go back. Like when I go to a laptop, I'm like, I don't know what to do here. like I can't, because a lot of times I'm, and what's nice about it is I can set things, especially when you have a lot of computers. I had one computer last night, watching the football game. So the football game's over on I just map it over to one of the monitors. I didn't show, I have an 8x8, HDMI router. So I just routed one of the computers over to one of the monitors, and then I'm just listening to it and watching it over there. And then but then I keep on working. I was setting up for the show later today, the Gray Matter Not show. And so I was setting up for that and making sure I had all the graphics ready and making sure, but I could kind of look over when everyone gets excited. It was a pretty good game actually last night. But I can kind of listen to it and, go through there. Yeah, go to Chris.
I can't stress enough how important it is to do what Alex is saying about having the ability to walk away. I used to not be able to do it. And Trish was really good when we started our relationship. I was at home once and I pulled out my laptop and she looked at me, she goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, client sent me a file. I have to make sure it's going to be okay tomorrow." "Oh, you have to work?" "Well, I just have to look at a file." "Well, you have to work, go to work." Like, go. Just leave. Like, go to work, and when you're done, come back. And I was really kind of offended, but she was spot on. And we have this complicated life where I spend a lot of it in the Bay Area, but my real home is in Sacramento. And when I go home, I'm 100 miles away from any computer, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I have my phone, and that's it.
I know. I had when I worked at Lucasfilm. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but when I worked at Lucasfilm, I lived in a house that didn't have central heat. Like I had a wood stove. It would happen to be very close to the ranch, so it was just easy. But it was in Nicasio, and it was in the middle of nowhere, and there was horses next door. But when I got back, and back then, the laptops were not particularly useful. Like in the late '90s, it was okay, but I didn't have any internet to speak of, and so it was really. I think that's where I really learned. I went through stages of not being like that. But I think there was something about that of spending about a year and a half of just like when I go home, there's nothing to do. Like there's nothing to do other than work on things and clean things and do things and think. I mean, I used to sit for hours just thinking, and I miss that. So I missed that, and I tend to do it. I also don't use my phone when I watch TV. I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but I very rarely do. I mean, it's not that I never do, but it's very rare for me to watch TV and use the phone at the same time, which is an odd thing given the way I work a lot of times. But I was just like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. And if I'm going to be somewhere else, I'm going to be somewhere else. But to be in two places at one time, I didn't think that it was worth it. Like if I don't think the TV show is worth doing that, if I'm going to sit in the TV room and I don't think it's worth giving it all my attention, I'm going to watch something else. So anyway, next question.
Next one comes to us from David Brady in New York City. Alex, I'm bullish on Cable Matters products.
I think you skipped one.
Did I skip? Oh, something must have cycled. Sorry about that. Douglas Carmichael, Jason, I'm impressed with your setup. What model of TV are you using, and wouldn't it be harder to mix without your monitors in the center?
Thank you. And I'm not sure what you mean by monitors, so I'll answer the TV question first. By the way, Black Friday special right here. It's $250 off. This is the LG 49 UN700-B. Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. But what it lets you do is exactly what you're seeing here, the quadplex. And any one of those can go up to 4K with HDR, and every single one of those is one of my Mac Minis, which is really, really handy.
Is that Spectre?
Yeah, buddy. Of course that's Spectre. Nice. Yes, it was it was for those who don't know, Alex and I discovered this app years and years ago, and this is an absolute gem. Let me push to it just so you can see it. All of that is marking nothing more than my voice. It is an absurd, and it is clean.
That's a great layout. We had lots of meetings about layouts. Like we use Spectre for a lot of our shows, and there was like meetings about where the buttons and where the things are going to. The only thing that I might, if you show it again, the if we cut to Jason again, what
do you want to see?
I was going to say just go back to the screen again. Yeah, the only thing that when I did level, I think it's level history. I think the one thing that I would say is that you can color code the area below the line. And I found that to be super useful because I would set it. You could set levels like this is purple, this is green, right. This is red or yellow, and you set those levels, and then you'd see these big. Like you could look at it from across the room. You have 20 of them, and you just see red somewhere or purple somewhere. You knew you were too high or too low. But anyway, it's a great app.
I used to have a whole bunch of color stuff, and I lost it because the new version doesn't really read the old version's setup, and the whole thing just kind of went sideways. But
it's still the best one. I mean, if someone's watching from a video scope thing like this, I mean, Spectre is the best one so far as flexibility and filling stuff. If it's not the most accurate, there's really high end ones that are really nice to do real hard work. But one that you're going to put on a monitor is great. We got Spectre to mostly to show off. What I mean by that is that we found that if we were only encoding an event, I got two elementals there in a laptop. Like, what am I going to show you? And to make it look like we were working, we built these arrays of scopes and stuff because I didn't really need it. The funny thing is, once you have scopes up, we started getting very attached to it. We started realizing we knew a lot of things because we had those scopes up and we could see a lot of things. And then it went from being kind of showy for the first couple months to like, I can't do a show if I don't have scopes.
Well, my favorite part of this particular thing is that I can switch back to it. Nope, wrong one. What are you for? There it is. So on the same computer, I have video scopes and audio scopes. And it's just two different desktops because the M1s are so incredibly efficient. But to answer Douglas's question, I don't know what you're talking about when you mean mixing. Are you talking about mixing audio? In which case,
probably.
I'm using the X32. I'm not. The studio monitors are never like this room is not set for mastering, and I wouldn't use those anyway. So no, that doesn't matter.
Next question.
Now is the one from David Brady from New York City. Alex, I'm bullish on Cable Matters products for angles, and he's got a link there to a combo pack of USB-C right-angle adapters.
Yeah, and I was trying to pull these up for my order, but I ordered those after. I think these are the ones that we identified as the right angles for that we saw on the Apple event, I believe. And so I've ordered a couple of these. This is what he's talking about here. They are good. I mean, this is. But I definitely agree. I've got a couple of them. I couldn't quite grab them fast enough, but these are the little right angles. I don't use those on the cables, and the reason I don't use it on the cables, I only use right angle adapters or any adapters when I can't find a cable to do that. And the reason for that is that I have them as backups, and I always want to be able to do it, but I hate having another thing that could pop out. That could pop out, bend, turn, whatever. So I'd rather have the whole cable there. I usually have a pair of these. I got these new, but I've got other ones as backups. But I don't use them as my primaries. Next question.
Next question comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. I like my Sony FX-3, but I can't get to the product button that allows you to hold up something to show in focus without covering your eyes. Any ideas?
I don't even know where that is. Like, is that, I don't know.
Yeah, there is a button on the back, and you can actually assign, at least on the FX3, there's a button you can assign to any feature.
Right.
The problem is it's way back up here. It's hard to get to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there's no remote that I'm aware of that allows you to engage that.
Yeah, I will say that the remote tools like Monitor Plus is great, but it's a little quirky. Like it's, like you're kind of like, it would be great if someone actually like backed up and wrote that again. Go ahead, Courtney.
I was going to ask, doesn't it have a Bluetooth app that runs on your phone that you can access those functions?
Isn't there?
There's Sony Remote, but it's not one of the features that I've been able to dig down
They
to.
didn't bring that feature out to the remote.
Yeah. Go ahead. Next question.
Next question comes from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. In Alex's setup with the multiple Mac Minis and the KVM switch, are there monitors that show at least one output of those machines, or does that not totally matter in this setup? Does this affect being alerted to system issues?
Yeah, so the way I realize I can't show this as easily, but the way I have this set up is that the Zoom machine, application, presentation, telestrator all feed into my the Zoom one doesn't, because I don't need that one. So it's application, presentation, telestrator, and one monitor from my studio all feed into the switcher. So if I pop up my multi-view, I can see all of those monitors, and I can just tap on any one of them and make a selection. So that's how I manage that. I've actually, as kind of a different KVM, have really thought about running one of their outputs into a switcher so that I could do that, but haven't done that yet. There is, by the way, I couldn't figure out, I rewired this a little while ago, and I couldn't figure out why I'd done what I had done. I routed all the computers directly into the switcher and not into my Blackbird. The second monitor goes into the Blackbird, and they're usually mirrored. I realized why is because I can't get the EDID to work through the Blackbird into the switcher. And I realized I must have ran into that before and then worked around it and then forgot. So anyway, I'm saying it now so everyone can remind me when I complain about it again. Next question.
Stefan Fischer, Würzburg, Germany, is back with us for this one. Some of the desks seem to be still under construction. Do you plan to sort things out someday?
Oh, we think about it. What is the day that's always there, but you never reach it as tomorrow? Anyway, so I think that eventually I'm going to build something. The next step for me is to print a bunch of stuff that gets things to where I want them. So I want to bring the switcher up. I want to put a little monitor below it. I want to have things a little bit more ergonomically laid out. And so I'm kind of working on that. And I'm going to print like lots of little bits and pieces to make that work. Then, the idea is to kind of figure out where all these need to be, and then have Chris, go to Chris's wood shop, and we'll build something does all the things, and then they'll probably not change for a couple of years. The real problem with building final things is that you tend to be pouring concrete into something that wants to move. So the disadvantage is it looks a little messy and it's a little chaotic. The advantage of it is that I'm constantly changing it, and as soon as I build something that looks more refined, that's the way it's going to be for a year. Now this one's changing every couple months. Like, I'm constantly evolving it, and I wouldn't be able to. That's always a mistake people make, is to pour we call it pouring the concrete too early, like before the forms are really ready. And so I tend to pour concrete very carefully, and usually sometimes never. But this is kind of a living organism at the moment. Yeah. Next question.
Alexander Knight from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. Does anyone make a cage for the Insta360 Link? Seems like this would be advantageous, as you could secure cables to it for strain relief.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Not really, because the Insta360 Link has a very delicate gimbal on top of it, which pans around 270 degrees and up and down. And if you put a cage around it, you'd get the cage in the shot, and you can't really attach anything to the gimbal. I built this little box to carry my Insta360 around, so it flips in and drops in with the base sticking up, and I put a cap on it. I can pull it out and flip it over, and it has a little lip inside, so I can slide it in. But I need to cut a hole or design a hole and print it out again for the cable, the USB-C cable to fit in, and then I could secure it somehow. Yeah. But it would be tough. The reason nobody makes a cage for it is because it's a separate gimbal that has to rotate around 360 degrees, so you can't really put it in a cage.
Yeah, I use the Velcro strip that comes with, or that I put on that cable, to attach it to the tripod or the light stand that I put it on. So a lot of times I put these on light stands, and so I give it a little bit of a safety loop, so it's got a little bit of gap, and then I attach it very tightly to the light stand, and that's how I protect it that way. Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez, back from Oklahoma City. Thanks for showing your setups. Now I don't feel so bad about having a messy desk. We all appreciate that. Can only have a clean desk for a couple of days before it gets cluttered again. I can't seem to ever have a large enough desk.
CJ.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I'm the same way. I always have a messy desk. And even though my desk today looked pretty darn messy, I spent some time actually trying to clean it up for the show because I didn't want to be a total basket case. The one thing that I find myself doing is when I have a lot on my mind and my head's really swimming with a lot of different inputs and a lot of different considerations, and I know that I need to focus on a single task and really get some deep work done, I'll spend an hour and just tidy up the desk and clean it, just to do a repetitive, low cognitive load task, just to kind of calm all of the noise, and then I can jump right into whatever I'm trying to work on. So that's kind of a strategy I use. But I find that because, especially since being more active in office hours, I've been in this state of rapid iteration, and changing things. It's always messy, and it's okay.
I always take, when we think about messy desks or anything else, I always like to have this image in my head of this is Einstein's desk. so anyway, I think that there's a nature of when you have a lot of things going on in your head, you have a lot of things that you want sitting right in front of you and not too far away. So I do clean up my desk, usually when I have guests. So I clean up, but I clean up the desk a little bit, but I'm pretty okay with it being pretty messy. Next question.
Tony Mobley has the last one from Noonan, Georgia. Which ATEM is Alex using?
I am using an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, the HDMI version. I have an SDI version, but it got pressed into action previously for the show, because I keep on threatening to go back to SDI. Haven't quite got there yet, but we're working on it. Yeah, there you go. Hopefully that's useful for you. Again, you don't need all. The only thing I want to say about this day is that if you're thinking about being a panelist, we have a new panelist meeting tomorrow, not the old panelist. You can come if you're an old panelist and you just want to hang out with everybody, but you don't have to. So anyway, but it's for new panelists. If you have questions and so on and so forth, sign up. You go to officehours.global/panelist. But again, this is for sign up there, and we'll make sure to get it out to you. With most of these right now, I'm doing announcements in Discord just so you know that they're there. But if you're a regular panelist, you're more than welcome to come, but you don't have to. If you're a new panelist, I'll be spending most of the time just explaining what it takes to be a panelist and answering your questions. But the one thing I want to say is that the most important thing that you work on is your mic. We just showed you a bunch of complicated things. We have people that jump in here with their laptop and a gray screen behind them and a good mic, and that's fine. Like, just so you know, like, we want to brainstorm and show you what ours looks like, so you get a sense of like what it actually looks like to have some of these images. But you don't have. That's not a minimum requirement to be on the panel. Your knowledge is the most important part, and good audio. so your knowledge and good audio. But I think, just to keep in mind, I don't want to show this all off and scare everybody away from doing that. So we'd love to have you on the panel. Thank you to all of the producers asking all these questions, making sure that we actually know what you want us to talk about. We really don't have much of a show if we don't have your questions. We also, of course, don't have a show if we don't have the panelists. So, and again, reminder that we have a new panelist meeting if you're interested. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll send out an announcement. And just note it. You'll see it pop up in Discord again. If you're an experienced panelist, you're more than welcome to come, but you don't have to. Thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. And thanks for being willing to show off all of our messy desks and how this all works. And thanks to the incredible team that actually cuts this show, edits this show, develops for the show, plans for the show. We really appreciate everyone's hard work. We traveled 84,000 miles. That's 135,000 kilometers, and that is 668 million bananas for scale. All right, let's jump into after hours.
By the way, I call cleaning your work area, call it defragging your desk.
Defragging the desk.
I like that. Yeah, to prospective panelists, this is a cautionary tale, not an intimidation tactic when you see all the crazy stuff we have.
Clean desk equals empty mind. That's
this
what
escalated quickly.
Yeah. What traps is you pull it apart and put it back together, and you go, oh, darn, it is better. Because it is better.
No, it's always better. Like I tear mine apart every 3 or 4 months, just to and put it back together, just so it forces it. Like I have to rethink it again. You
have a lot.
You can always tell how many phone calls. Sorry, what did you say?
I said you have a lot of cables. I thought my cabling was bad. I looked at yours. I'm like, ooh, that's giving me anxiety.
Yeah, I used to keep it really clean, but the problem is I keep changing it, and then I was unwiring it and doing things. It's just not in a state where I can do that. Like, I gave up on